It was a bright, sunny afternoon in a little place called Oakwood Lane. This was a quiet neighborhood where everything looked nice and peaceful. The birds were singing happy songs, flying from tree to tree. The grass on everyone's lawns looked green and shiny, like it was showing off. Kids played in their yards, laughing and running around. The houses stood in neat rows with pretty flowers in front of them. Everything seemed just perfect, like a picture from a storybook. But oh boy, not everything was as calm as it looked. Trouble was hiding, waiting to pop out like a jack-in-the-box. Let me tell you about a guy named Jake Harper. Jake was new to Oakwood Lane. He moved into his house just 1 week ago. He was so excited to start a new life here. Jake was a friendly guy with a big smile. He had short brown hair and liked wearing comfy jeans and t-shirts. All he wanted was to enjoy his new home. It wasn't a fancy house, but it was his. It had a little porch out back where he could sit and relax. Jake loved that spot. He decided to make it extra cozy. So he put down a simple gray mat on the patio floor. It wasn't a big deal, just a plain mat to keep his feet clean. When he looked at it, he smiled and thought, "This is it. My fresh start begins right here." Now Jake imagined sitting on his patio with a cold drink, listening to the birds. Maybe he'd read a book or just watched the clouds float by. He felt happy, like everything was going his way. The sun was warm, the air smelled like flowers, and he couldn't wait to make this place his own. He didn't want any trouble. He didn't want any fights. All Jake wanted was peace. But sometimes peace doesn't last long when certain people are around. And in Oakwood Lane, there was one person who loved to stir things up. Her name was Karen Withers. Oh, Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the boss of the neighborhood, or at least she thought she was. Karen lived 2 houses down from Jake. She had a big house with a perfect lawn and a shiny mailbox. She wore fancy sunglasses and always carried a little notebook. That notebook was her weapon. She used it to write down anything she didn't like. Karen was the queen of the HOA. Now, HOA stands for Homeowners Association. It's a group that makes rules for the neighborhood, like what color your house can be or how tall your grass can grow. Most people didn't mind the rules, but Karen, she loved them. She loved them too much. Karen walked around Oakwood Lane like she owned every inch of it. She had sharp eyes, like an eagle hunting for something to catch. Nothing got past her. If someone's trash can was out too long, she'd write it down. If a kid left a toy in the yard, she'd knock on the door and complain. Karen thought it was her job to keep everything perfect, and if you didn't follow her rules, watch out, she'd make your life tricky. The neighbors called her HOA Karen behind her back. They'd roll their eyes when she wasn't looking. But no one dared to tell her to stop. She was loud, she was bossy, and she always got her way. Now Jake didn't know about Karen yet. He was too busy unpacking boxes and setting up his new home. He didn't know that his little gray mat was about to cause a big problem. See, Karen had rules about everything, even patio mats. She liked things to look a certain way. To her, gray wasn't good enough. It wasn't neutral enough, whatever that meant. She wanted beige or tan or something boring. Gray, oh no, that was breaking the rules in Karen's world. And when Karen saw something she didn't like, she didn't just sit quietly. She acted fast. It all started on that sunny afternoon. Jake was inside his house, putting dishes in the kitchen. He didn't hear Karen's footsteps outside. She was on her daily walk, checking every house like a detective. Her sunglasses were perched on her nose and her notebook was ready. She stopped in front of Jake's house. Her eyes zoomed in on that gray mat. She tilted her head, squinted, and frowned. "What is that?" she muttered to herself. She didn't like it one bit. To her, it stuck out like a sore thumb. It wasn't fancy or perfect like her patio. It was just gray, and that was enough to make her mad. Karen didn't know Jake yet. She didn't know he was a nice guy who just wanted to relax. All she saw was a new neighbor with a mat she hated. She decided right then and there this mat had to go. She wasn't going to let some new guy ruin her perfect neighborhood. She flipped open her notebook and wrote, "New guy, ugly gray mat, rule breaker." Then she snapped it shut and nodded to herself. She had a plan. Karen always had a plan. And poor Jake, he was about to become her next target. But here's the fun part. Karen didn't know something huge about Jake, something secret, something that would flip her whole bossy game upside down. Jake wasn't just any guy. He had a trick up his sleeve and Karen had no clue. She thought she was in charge, but oh boy was she wrong. What was Jake hiding? Why wasn't he worried about Karen? You're probably curious now, right? Good, because this story is about to get wild. Stick with me and you'll see how it all unfolds. It's going to be a ride you won't forget. Before we go on, let's talk to you for a second. Have you ever had a nosy neighbor like Karen? Someone who watches everything you do and tells you what's wrong. Maybe they complained about your bike in the driveway or your dog barking. Tell me about it in the comments below. I bet some of you have funny stories. Oh, and one more thing, where are you watching from today? Are you at home, at school, or somewhere else? Let me know. If you like stories like this, hit that subscribe button so we can hang out more. Okay, back to Jake and Karen. Things are about to heat up. Now, Jake had no idea what was coming. He was still unpacking, humming a little song. He put a picture frame on his shelf, a photo of him smiling somewhere sunny. He liked simple things. He didn't need a big fancy life. His house was small, but it felt like home already. The patio was his favorite part. That gray mat, it wasn't special to most people, but to Jake it was perfect. It made his patio feel like his own little spot. He couldn't wait to sit out there and enjoy the quiet. Meanwhile, Karen was already plotting. She stood on her porch staring at Jake's house. She tapped her pen against her notebook. "Newbies," she grumbled. "They think they can do whatever they want." She didn't like new people moving in. They didn't know her rules yet, and Karen loved teaching them whether they wanted to learn or not. She'd been the HOA queen for years. No one ever stood up to her. She'd find people for silly things like planting the wrong flowers or parking their car too close to the curb. Everyone just paid the fines and stayed quiet. Karen liked it that way. But Jake, he was different. He didn't even know it yet, but he wasn't the kind of guy to let someone boss him around. He'd faced bigger things than Karen in his life. Way bigger. She thought she was tough, but Jake had something she didn't expect. What was it? Oh, you'll love this part when it comes. Karen was walking right into a surprise, and she didn't even see it coming. Her eagle eyes missed the most important thing of all. The sun started to dip lower in the sky. The birds got quieter and the kids went inside for dinner. Oakwood Lane looked calm again, but under the surface something was brewing. Jake finished unpacking and stepped outside. He stood on his patio, hands in his pockets, looking at the gray mat. He smiled. Nice, he said to himself. He had no idea Karen was watching from her window, her frown growing bigger. She was ready to start trouble. And Jake? He was ready for something else. Something Karen would never guess. So what's next? Will Karen win this fight, or will Jake's secret change everything? You're hooked now, aren't you? I knew you would be. This is just the start. Keep reading, because the fun is about to begin. Karen's got her notebook, Jake's got his mat, and Oakwood Lane is about to see some fireworks. Tell me, what do you think Jake's hiding? Guess in the comments. Let's see who gets it right. It was a nice, warm morning on Oakwood Lane. The sun was shining bright and a soft breeze made the trees wiggle a little. Jake Harper was sitting on his cozy patio. He had a big mug of coffee in his hands. The steam floated up and he took a slow sip. He liked how it tasted, warm and a little sweet. His gray mat was under his feet, soft and simple. Jake smiled. He loved this spot. It was his little piece of the world. Everything felt calm and good. But that calm wasn't going to last long. Trouble was coming, and it had a name. Karen Withers. Out of nowhere, Karen marched up to Jake's patio. Her shoes clicked loud on the sidewalk. She stopped right in front of him, her arms crossed tight over her chest. Her lips were squeezed together like she'd just eaten a sour lemon. She looked mad, really mad. Her eyes locked onto Jake's gray mat. She pointed at it with one finger like it was something bad. That mat, she said, her voice sharp and loud. It's ugly, it's an eyesore. The rules say neutral colors only and gray. That's pushing it. She sounded like a teacher scolding a kid who broke a rule. Jake blinked. He didn't get it. He looked at the mat, then back at Karen. It's just a mat, he said. His voice was soft and calm, like he didn't want a fight. He took another sip of his coffee, thinking maybe she'd go away. But Karen wasn't the kind of person who just goes away. Oh no, she huffed, a big puff of air coming out of her nose. You newbies think you can do whatever you want, she snapped. I'll have that mat gone by tomorrow or else. Her words hung in the air like a warning. Then she turned around and strutted off, her head held high like she'd won something. Now Jake watched her go. He shook his head a little, like he couldn't believe what just happened. Most people would have laughed or ignored her. Matt, really, it wasn't a big deal, but Karen wasn't like most people. She wasn't joking, she wasn't bluffing, she meant every word she said. Karen loved being in charge, she loved telling people what to do. Everyone on Oakwood Lane knew it. If you didn't follow her rules, she'd make sure you regretted it. She was the HOA queen, and she ruled with a notebook and a frown. Jake set his coffee mug down on the little table next to him. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the mat again. It was just gray. Plain old gray, nothing fancy, nothing loud. He liked it that way. But Karen, she saw it like it was a monster ruining her perfect neighborhood. To her, everything had to be just right her way. And Jake's mat, it didn't fit her idea of right. She wasn't going to let it slide, not a chance. Back at her house, Karen was already planning. She sat on her porch with her notebook open. She wrote fast, her pen scratching the paper. New guy, gray mat breaking rules, she scribbled. She tapped her pen on the page, thinking hard. She didn't like Jake. He was new, and new people always caused trouble in her mind. She'd seen it before. Someone moves in, they don't know the rules, and boom, chaos. Karen wasn't going to let that happen, not on her street, not on her watch. Now Jake didn't know what Karen was writing. He didn't know she was making a plan to get rid of his mat. He just sat there enjoying the sunshine. The birds chirped overhead and a squirrel ran across the yard. It was peaceful, but under that peace something was starting to bubble up. Trouble was growing, like a storm cloud sneaking across the sky. Karen wanted a fight, and she was going to get one, whether Jake wanted it or not. Later that day, Karen started talking to the neighbors. She knocked on doors, her notebook in hand. "Have you seen that mat?" she asked Mrs. Jenkins next door. Mrs. Jenkins was old and sweet. She just nodded. "It's awful," Karen went on. "Gray, can you believe it? The rules say neutral colors. That's not neutral." Mrs. Jenkins didn't really care, but she didn't say that. She just smiled and said, "Oh my." Karen moved on to Mr. Lopez across the street. "He's new," she told him. "Thinks he can ignore the rules. We can't let that happen." Mr. Lopez shrugged. He liked Jake. Jake had waved at him yesterday, but Karen didn't care what anyone thought. She was on a mission. By dinner time, half the street had heard about the mat. Some people rolled their eyes. "It's just a mat," they whispered to each other. But others started to wonder. Maybe Karen was right. Maybe Jake was trouble. Rumors spread like wildfire. "He's a rule breaker," someone said. "He doesn't fit in," said another. Karen smiled when she heard it. She loved when people listened to her. It made her feel big and important. She went to bed that night thinking she'd win this battle easy. But Jake, he wasn't worried, not one bit. He finished his coffee and went inside. He washed his mug and put it away. Then he sat on his couch and turned on the TV. He didn't yell or get mad. He didn't call Karen names. He just stayed quiet, too quiet, like he knew something she didn't, like he had a secret tucked away in his pocket. What was he up to? Why wasn't he scared of Karen? Most people would be. She was loud and pushy. But Jake, he acted like none of it mattered. That made things even more interesting. The next morning, Jake woke up early. He went back to his patio with a new cup of coffee. The mat was still there, looking the same as always. He sat down and stretched his legs out. The air smelled fresh, like rain might come later. He liked that smell. It made him feel calm. But then he saw something in his mailbox. It was a letter. He got up, walked over, and pulled it out. The envelope had HOA written on it in big letters. Jake opened it and read. Remove the gray mat by tomorrow or pay a fine, it said. It was signed by Karen Withers. Now Jake laughed a little, not a big laugh, just a quiet one. He folded the letter and put it in his pocket. He didn't rip it up. He didn't stomp his feet. He just went back to his chair and sat down. He sipped his coffee again, looking out at the street. Karen's house was 2 doors down. He could see her peeking out her window, watching him. She probably thought he'd be mad or scared, but Jake wasn't. He just smiled. A small, sneaky smile, like he had a trick ready to play. Karen saw that smile. It made her mad. She didn't like it when people didn't listen to her. She grabbed her phone and started typing a message to the HOA group. He's ignoring the letter, she wrote. We need to do something. She hit send and waited. A few people replied. It's just a mat, one said. Leave him alone, said another. But Karen didn't listen. She was too stubborn. She wanted that mat gone, and she'd make it happen, no matter what. Now Jake knew she wouldn't stop. He could tell. Karen was the kind of person who kept pushing until she got her way. But he wasn't going to fight her, not yet. He stayed quiet, watching and waiting. The tension was building, like a rubber band stretching tighter and tighter. Something big was coming. Karen thought she was in control, but Jake, he had something up his sleeve, something she'd never guess. What was it? Oh, you'll find out soon. It's going to be good. The day went on. Karen kept glaring at Jake's house. She walked by twice, staring at the mat. Jake waved at her once, nice and friendly. That made her even madder. She didn't wave back. She just kept walking, her arms crossed again. The neighbors started picking sides. Some liked Jake's calm way. Others thought Karen was right about the rules. Oakwood Lane wasn't so peaceful anymore. It was like a little war was starting, all over a gray mat. But Jake stayed cool. He didn't let Karen's huffing and puffing bother him. He went about his day, watering his plants and fixing a loose step on his porch. He acted like nothing was wrong, but deep down he was ready. Ready for what? That's the fun part. Karen had no idea what she was walking into. She thought she'd win easy, but Jake, he was hiding something big. Something that would turn this whole mess upside down. Stick around, you won't want to miss what happens next. The next day started like any other on Oakwood Lane. The sun popped up, bright and happy, painting the sky with yellow and orange. Birds chirped their little songs, hopping from branch to branch. Jake woke up early like he always did. He liked morning. They felt fresh and new. He grabbed a cup of coffee, black with a tiny bit of sugar, and stepped out onto his patio. His gray mat was still there, sitting quietly under his feet. He took a sip and looked around. Everything seemed normal. But then he saw something funny. Karen was peeking over her fence. Yep, there she was, 2 houses down, her head poked up just enough so her eyes could see Jake's patio. She had her notebook in one hand and a pen in the other. She was scribbling fast like a spy in a movie. Jake tilted his head and squinted. What was she writing? He couldn't see the words, but he could guess. Probably something about his mat. That silly gray mat she hated so much. Karen's face looked grumpy like always. Her lips were tight and her eyebrows were scrunched up. She didn't know Jake was watching her watch him. He almost waved, but he didn't. He just took another sip of coffee and let her scribble. Later that morning, Jake went to check his mailbox. It was one of those metal boxes at the end of his driveway. He flipped it open and there it was, a white envelope with HOA written on it in big, bold letters. He pulled it out and tore it open. Inside was a letter. It said, "Remove the gray mat by tomorrow or pay a fine." The words were typed all neat and fancy, but at the bottom, Karen had signed her name with a big, swirly K. Jake read it once, then twice. He didn't get mad. He didn't frown. Instead, he chuckled. A little laugh, soft and quiet, like he'd heard a joke. He folded the letter up nice and small and tucked it into his pocket. Then he shut the mailbox and walked back to his house. Most people would have been upset. A fine over a mat. That's crazy. But Jake didn't argue. He didn't call Karen or knock on her door. He didn't even tell the neighbors about the letter. He just went about his day like nothing happened. He grabbed his watering can, the green one with a long spout, and started watering his plants. He had a few pots with red flowers by his porch. He liked how they looked, all bright and pretty. The water splashed out, making the dirt wet and shiny. Jake hummed a little tune while he worked. He didn't seem worried at all. After that, he walked around the neighborhood a bit. He waved at Mr. Lopez across the street. "Morning," Jake called out. Mr. Lopez waved back with a big smile. He was fixing his bike in the driveway. Then Jake passed Mrs. Jenkins, the nice old lady next door. She was sitting on her porch with a cup of tea. "Hi, Mrs. Jenkins," Jake said. She nodded and said, "Hello, dear." Jake kept walking, hands in his pockets, acting like it was just another happy day. But trouble was sneaking around, and it wasn't going to stay quiet for long. Karen wasn't done, not even close. She put her notebook down after spying on Jake and decided to take things up a notch. She started talking to everyone she could find. First, she went to Mrs. Jenkins. "That new guy, Jake," Karen said, her voice loud and bossy. "He's trouble. He's got that ugly gray mat and he won't listen to the rules." Mrs. Jenkins sipped her tea and didn't say much. She didn't really care about mats, but Karen kept going. "He's a rule breaker. We can't have that here." Then she marched over to Mr. Lopez. "Have you seen what Jake doing?" she asked. Mr. Lopez wiped his hands on a rag and shrugged. "He seems nice," he said, but Karen shook her head. "Nice? No way, he's trouble." Pretty soon, Karen had talked to half the street. She went door to door, telling everyone her story. "Jake thinks he's above the rules," she said to the Millers, who lived at the corner. "That Matt has to go." She told the same thing to the Parkers, who had a big dog that barked a lot. "He's going to ruin Oakwood Lane," she warned them. Some people listened and nodded. Others just closed their doors quick so she'd leave. But Karen's words started spreading. People began whispering, "Who does he think he is?" Someone said at the mailbox. "A gray mat, that's weird," said another over the fence. The neighborhood was buzzing, all because of Karen. Jake heard some of it. He couldn't help it. When he walked by, he caught little bits of talk. "Trouble," one lady whispered to her friend. "Rule breaker," a man muttered while mowing his lawn. Jake didn't stop to explain. He didn't tell them the mat was no big deal. He just kept going, waving like always. "Hi there," he'd say, friendly as ever, but inside he was watching, listening, waiting. Every time Karen glared at him from her porch or her window, he'd look back and smile. Not a big smile, just a small one, a knowing smile, like he had a secret he wasn't telling yet. That smile drove Karen nuts. She'd see it from her house and frown even harder. "Why's he smiling?" she'd mutter to herself. "He should be scared. He's got a fine coming." She didn't get it. Most people would be nervous or mad if they got a letter like that. But Jake, he acted like it was nothing, like he didn't care about her rules or her fines. That made Karen madder than ever. She wanted him to take that mat away. She wanted him to say, "Okay, Karen, you win." But Jake didn't. He kept it right there on his patio, gray and proud. The days went on and things got trickier. Karen didn't stop. She sent another letter. This one said, "You ignored the first warning. Remove the mat now or the fine gets bigger." Jake got it in his mailbox on Wednesday. He pulled it out, read it, and chuckled again. He tucked it away with the first one. Then he went back to his day. He fixed a loose board on his porch steps, hammering it down with a few quick bangs. He swept the leaves off his driveway, making little piles. He even helped Mrs. Jenkins carry her groceries inside. "Thank you, Jake," she said with a smile. "You're welcome," he replied. He was so calm, so nice, but that calm was hiding something. Karen kept pushing. She called an HOA meeting. It was Thursday night and a bunch of neighbors showed up at her house. She stood in her living room holding her notebook like a prize. "We've got a problem," she told them. "Jake Harper won't follow the rule. That mat is breaking everything we stand for." Some people nodded. "It's not that neutral," one guy said. "Gray's kind of boring," a lady added, but others weren't so sure. "It's just a mat," Mr. Lopez said. "Why do we care?" Karen glared at him. "Because rules are rules," she snapped. The meeting went on and the whispers got louder. Jake didn't go to the meeting. He stayed home, sitting on his patio. He could hear voices drifting over from Karen's house. He knew they were talking about him, about his mat. But he didn't march over there. He didn't yell or fight. He just sat there, sipping water now. Coffee time was over. The stars were coming out, twinkling in the dark sky. Jake looked up at them and smiled that small smile again. It was like he was waiting for something, something big, something that would change the game. What was Jake waiting for? Why wasn't he scared of Karen? Most people would be. She was loud and mean and wouldn't give up. But Jake wasn't like most people. He wasn't just some random guy who moved into Oakwood Lane. There was more to him, something Karen didn't see. Every time she glared, every time she wrote in her notebook, Jake's smile got a tiny bit bigger. He was watching her too, watching and waiting. The truth was creeping closer, like a shadow moving slow across the grass. Can you guess what it might be? Think about it. Jake's not mad. He's not worried. He's calm, too calm. What's he hiding? Something fun, something surprising. Hold tight, because it's coming. The story's heating up and the big moment is almost here. Karen thinks she's winning, but Jake, he's got a trick ready, a good one. You'll see soon, and it's going to be awesome. Friday morning came fast on Oakwood Lane. The sun was up, shining bright like it was ready for a big show. The birds were quiet, like they knew something exciting was about to happen. Jake Harper woke up early, just like every day. He made his coffee black with a little sugar and stepped outside. His gray mat was still there on the patio, looking the same as always. He took a sip and sat down in his chair. He liked how peaceful it felt, but that peace wasn't going to last. Not today. Today was the day everything would flip upside down. Karen Withers had had enough. She'd been mad all week about Jake's mat. She wrote letters, she talked to neighbors, she even had a meeting. But Jake didn't take the mat away. It was still there, gray and simple, sitting on his patio like it didn't care. Karen couldn't stand it anymore. She woke up Friday morning with a plan, a big one. She wasn't going to wait for fines or rule. She was going to win right now. She grabbed her phone off the kitchen counter. Her hands shook a little because she was so worked up. She dialed 911. Yep, the police. She was calling the cops over a mat. When the operator answered, Karen put on her best dramatic voice. "Hello, there's a disturbance on Oakwood Lane," she said, loud and fast. "This man refuses to follow HOA rules. It's chaos. You need to come quick." She made it sound like the whole street was falling apart. The operator asked a few questions, but Karen kept going. "It's that gray mat. He won't take it down. It's ruining everything." She hung up and smirked. A little smile spread across her face. She thought she'd won. She thought the police would come, see the mat, and make Jake get rid of it. She crossed her arms and waited by her window, peeking out through the curtains. Pretty soon, sirens started wailing in the distance. They got louder and louder, echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Neighbors heard it too. Mrs. Jenkins put down her tea and looked out her window. Mr. Lopez stopped fixing his bike and stood up. The Millers and the Parkers peeked through their blinds. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. A police car rolled down Oakwood Lane, its red and blue lights flashing bright. It stopped right in front of Jake's house. The tires crunched on the gravel and the sirens turned off. The street got quiet again, too quiet. Everyone was watching. Now Jake heard the sirens, too. He set his coffee mug down on the little table next to his chair. He stood up slow and easy, stretching his arms a bit. Then he stepped off the patio and onto his porch. The gray mat stayed right where it was. Jake didn't look scared. He didn't look mad. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, watching the police car. His face was calm, like he knew something nobody else did. The neighbors whispered to each other. "What's happening?" they said. "Is Jake in trouble?" They didn't know what to think. Karen couldn't wait any longer. She burst out of her house and marched across the street. Her shoes clicked loud on the pavement. She had a big grin on her face, like she'd just won a prize. She stopped a few feet from Jake's porch and pointed at him. "See, I told you," she crowed. Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "I said that Matt had to go, and now the police are here. You should have listened to me." She crossed her arms again and rocked back on her heels. She was so sure she'd beat Jake. She thought the cop would take her side and make him throw the mat away. She was ready to gloat, to rub it in his face. The police car door opened and an officer stepped out. He was tall, with a blue uniform and a shiny badge. He had a friendly face, not a mean one. He looked at Jake and waved. "Hey Harper," he said with a big grin. "What's this about a mat?" His voice was light, like he was talking to an old friend. Jake waved back, a little wave, nice and easy. "Hey Tom," he said, "just a little mix-up, I guess." The officer, Tom, laughed. It was a loud, happy laugh that bounced off the houses. Karen's jaw dropped. Her mouth fell open so wide you could have fit an apple in it. She blinked fast, like she couldn't believe her eyes. The neighbors gasped. Mrs. Jenkins almost dropped her tea. Mr. Lopez's eyebrows shot up. Everyone froze, staring at Jake and the cop. Karen's big grin was gone. Her face started turning red, redder than a ripe tomato. She didn't know what to say. She just stood there, her arms falling to her sides, looking silly. Now Jake turned to Karen, that small smile he'd been hiding all week. It broke wide now, a big, bright smile that showed his teeth. He looked right at her and said, "Oh, did I mention I'm an off-duty cop, been working undercover nearby. This mat, it's staying." His voice was calm but strong, like he'd been waiting to say it forever. He pointed at the gray mat behind him. It sat there, quiet and proud, like it was part of the team. Boom, that was it, the big surprise. The whole street went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Nobody moved, nobody talked, they just stared. Karen's face got even redder, if that was possible. Her eyes got big and her hands started to shake. She'd called 911 on a cop, a real cop. Not just any cop, but Jake Harper, the nice new guy who waved at everyone. She didn't just lose, she made a huge mistake. She called the police on one of their own. The officer, Tom, walked over to Jake. He clapped him on the shoulder, still grinning. "Undercover, huh?" he said. "You always were good at keeping quiet." Jake nodded. "Yep, just moved here to take a break. Didn't think a mat would cause all this." They both laughed like it was the funniest thing ever. The neighbors started whispering again, but now it was different. "He's a cop," Mrs. Jenkins said to herself. "Wow, Jake's a policeman," Mr. Lopez muttered. The Millers and Parkers looked at each other, surprised but smiling. Karen didn't know what to do. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She tried to talk, but nothing came out. But the rule," she finally squeaked. Her voice was small now, not loud and bossy like before. She pointed at the mat, but her hand was wobbly. She looked silly standing there, all red and confused. Tom, the officer, turned to her. "Ma'am," he said, nice but firm. "This isn't a disturbance, it's just a mat, no laws broken here." He shrugged, like it was no big deal. Jake crossed his arms and leaned against his porch railing. He looked at Karen, still smiling. "I like my mat," he said. "It's not hurting anyone. Maybe you should relax a little." His words were simple, but they hit hard. Karen blinked again. She didn't have her notebook now. She didn't have her rules to hide behind. She called the cops, and the cops were on Jake's side. She'd lost big time. The neighbors started coming out of their houses. Mrs. Jenkins walked over with her cane, smiling at Jake. "You're a policeman?" she asked. "That's wonderful." Jake nodded. "Yes, ma'am, just taking some time off." Mr. Lopez came too. "Cool," he said. "I knew you were a good guy." The Millers and Parkers waved from their yards. Everyone was talking now, but not about the mat anymore. They were talking about Jake, how he'd fooled them all, but in a good way. Karen took a step back. Her face was so red it looked like it might pop. She turned around and started walking back to her house. Her shoes didn't click so loud this time. She didn't strut. She just shuffled, head down, like a kid who got caught being naughty. The neighbors watched her go. Some giggled, some shook their heads. Karen had been the boss of Oakwood Lane for so long, but now she looked small, really small. Jake and Tom kept talking. "How's the undercover stuff going?" Tom asked. "Good," Jake said. "Just glad to be here now." They laughed again. The police car sat there, lights off, quiet. Tom tipped his hat to Jake. "Call me if you need anything," he said. "Will do," Jake replied. Tom got back in his car and drove off, waving one last time. The sirens didn't come back on. The street was calm again, but different. Now Jake stepped back onto his patio. He picked up his coffee mug and took a sip. It was cold now, but he didn't mind. He looked at his gray mat and smiled. It was still there. It wasn't going anywhere. Karen had tried her best, but Jake had won, not with yelling or fighting, but with a secret, a big, awesome secret. He was a cop, and nobody saw it coming. Not even Karen, the HOA queen. The big reveal was over, but the fun wasn't done. What would happen next? Would Karen give up, or would she try again? One thing was sure, Oakwood Lane would never forget this day. Jake's mat was famous now, and so was he. Boom, what a twist. The police officer, Tom, laughed loud and happy. He patted Jake on the shoulder like they were best buddies. Then he turned to Karen. "Ma'am," he said, nice but clear, "this isn't an emergency. It's just a mat. Next time maybe talk it out." Karen's face was still red. She tried to talk. But the rules," she said, her voice all shaky. She didn't know what else to say. Jake just shrugged, easy and calm. "Rules are important, Karen," he said, "but so's knowing who you're picking a fight with." He smiled a little, and that made her look even sillier. The neighbors watched from their windows and yards. Some had liked Karen before. They'd nodded when she talked about rules, but now they chuckled. They hid behind their curtains and laughed quietly. Karen wasn't the boss anymore. She'd lost, and everyone could see it. Jake stood tall on his porch, his gray mat still there. He didn't yell or brag. He didn't need to. He won just by being himself, a cop who didn't scare easy. By Monday, things changed big time. The HOA sent out a new memo. It was a little paper that said, "Patio mats are fine." Yep, just like that. No more fighting about mats. Karen didn't write it. She couldn't. Someone else in the HOA did. She didn't argue either. She was too embarrassed. She stopped walking by Jake's house with her notebook. She stopped peeking over fences. She stayed quiet, hiding in her big house. The Queen of Oakwood Lane wasn't so bossy now. Jake, he went back to his normal days. He sat on his patio with his coffee, sipping it slow. The gray mat stayed right where it was. The sun shone down, the birds sang, and everything felt peaceful again. No more letters, no more glares from Karen, just calm. Justice was served, and it felt good, like eating a sweet piece of candy after a long day. So that's the story, friends. A tiny mat, a big bossy ego, and a surprise nobody expected. Sometimes the loudest people need to learn the most. And the quiet ones, they might have the best secrets. Next time someone tries to boss you around, think of Jake. Just smile. You don't always need words to win. The best comebacks are the ones you don't even say. What did you think of that twist? Tell me in the comments. And what's the silliest thing a neighbor ever did to you? I want to know. See you next time for another fun story.